if I didn't meet and marry my wife, I'd be a hardworking, diligent young man, and I'd probably be 130 kilos and chronically ill. I would just, for me, when I'm busy, I just eat. I just shove food in my face, and I like being busy, and I don't want to think about what I eat. That's just the way I'm wired. So there would be no farm business if it wasn't for my wife coaching me along on this lifestyle journey.
Inside of the city, the people are crazy, out of their minds, they ain't got a clue. We gone away, headed west for Montana, left family and friends, all I got now is you. We both got new jobs, a house and a homestead, thinking this was the life, all that there'd be. After our firstborn, you had to stay home. That's when the work got in the way for me. Well, I started farm hop life. We'll come to your farm to help and to wander. Me and the family, a truck and an RV. Send us a message and there will be.
This is the Farm Hop Life Podcast, a traveling homestead family. I'm Matt DeRozier. I have today Jake Wolki of Wolki Farm and Wolki Butchery of Australia. Let me embarrass myself for just a minute. I'm not sure what it was, but something I saw that stuck with me. That you were, I was so sure that you were in New Zealand. You are not in New Zealand. So we figured it out last minute, and now we're here. Thanks for being here, man.
Absolute pleasure.
So let's get into it chronologically here. So you got up to grade 10, worked at your mom and dad's music shop, and then that was going under the industry was changing because of the internet, and then you got into bikes, and you did that for a while, and now you shifted into farming. So how do you go from?
You've done some homework.
Not as much as I like, but I did a little bit. So how do you go from bikes to being a rancher?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different steps along the way, but my family and I purchased the bike shop that we still own in 2011. And in 2013, we purchased a commercial property in town, which was an old derelict bowling club. It actually had squatters in the clubhouse. And we developed that and built a new big bike shop. And in 2014, we moved into that bicycle shop, and we had a corner. It's quite a big store. So the footprint's about 800 meters squared. I guess you'd triple that for feet, roughly. And we cut a corner out to put a cafe in there. And the cafe for us was a supportive business for the bicycle shop. We thought, the Lycra lads can roll through on their morning ride and grab an espresso and a croissant and keep going. And for us, it was just really about building a hub to support the main family enterprise, which was the bike shop and still is. And so my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, Anne, was running that cafe for a little while. And then she had our first son. So I took it over as well as the bicycle store. We made some changes. And just somewhere along the way, I guess my wife kept prodding me about my own health issues. I've had allergy issues, skin issues, like digestion issues. Nothing that I would say was extremely chronic or debilitating, except for my hay fever and allergies during the middle of spring and early summer. But I just accepted most of them, that they were just part of life. Everyone probably deals with this stuff. Just get on with it, go to work, blow your nose, try to hide it from customers so you don't look like you're falling apart and don't want to be there. And my wife's very health conscious, and her family are in tune with how they feel. Maybe almost too much, because they're always nursing something or contending with something. I think there's a fine line between tuning in with your body and then just getting on with it and muscling through. There's something in the middle. But we ended up starting to figure out that the things that we ate made us feel better and worse, which when you're in this space now, it's good job, Sherlock. It's not rocket science. But when you don't come from that background, food's food. You just grab food and you just eat it. And so I went down a bit of a rabbit hole. I was following Justin Rhodes on YouTube when he was doing the Great American Farm Tour. And I actually remember sitting down watching the video where he was at Paul Gauchi's Back to Eden garden and looking at the deep bedding in the orchards and pruning the trees. And I was doing a lot of gardening and orchard work on the family farm at the time, my parents' property, just because I loved it. And a little thumbnail popped up on the side. And it was more Justin Rhodes clickbait, and it said something to the effect of, this man buys land at $30 an acre. And I knew it was clickbait, and I clicked on it, and it was Justin Rhodes on his tour visiting Joel Salatin, and the tagline was, with $30 per acre of infrastructure, he doubles his productivity. And I thought, this is cool. Like, I wonder if I can do this on my dad's farm, if I can double our productivity with a bit of water and wire. And we've well and truly spanked that. I don't even know what the multiplier would be now, but it's gone from being a hobby farm that probably turned over $60,000 of revenue a year just by set stocking a couple dozen steers to generating over $1 million a year in revenue just with a bit of management.
Wow, that's impressive. Good for you, man. Super impressive. So, yeah, you mentioned...
Well, $1 million Australian's not quite the same as $1 million US.
Hey, you hit 7 figures, right? That's all that matters.
Well, what do we say at home? We say turnover's vanity, cash flow's sanity, and profit is king.
I don't think I've ever heard that before.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of construction companies in Australia doing hundreds of millions of dollars of turnover a year and going insolvent.
Yeah, I could see that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you touched on kind of like just food is food and you eat what's available kind of thing, but because that's just like the standard, right? Like Western diet. But you don't until like you said, unless you grew up in it or until you notice how it makes you feel, you had to learn it. You had to learn it the hard way. Like,
well, you have to unlearn it and relearn it.
That's
the
true.
Food pyramid, which we now know is corrupt, and was suspect. The whole foundation of the thing that was taught to me in school.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember for most of my life, I'd eat a piece of steak and I'd cut the fat cap off the porterhouse at a restaurant and leave it behind because I felt guilty eating it. But I wouldn't think twice about having 3 large glasses of Coca-Cola with my dinner and finishing it up with a big scoop of ice cream and some chocolate syrup on top, because that was a special treat. That was okay. But the fat cap off the grass-fed porterhouse steak was so bad for me that I had to do the right thing and leave it behind. It's brainwashing.
So let's talk about your setup. What was the infrastructure like before you took it over? So like what did your dad or your parents have for their hobby farm?
So the 100 acres they purchased almost 20 years ago, Dad put a nice big shed on it, big 4-bay shed. He ripped out all the old fences. It was an old dairy that got subdivided and sold. So it had a lot of rundown fences. Dad ripped all the fences up, and one of his best mates, who was a stock agent, told him where to put all the new fences. So we split the 100-acre property, which is a bit over 40 hectares for the Aussies listening and the Kiwis. They split that into 5 paddocks with all nice new shiny fences, galvanized pickets, barbed wire on the top, hot wire in the middle. Half of it had cyclone wire and all sorts of stuff. Really nice quality fences. In my point of view, most of them are in the wrong place now. But that's really what was there. There was a shed and 5 paddocks.
That's so like no waterers, no.
There's 2 dams on the property that just fill up with rainwater, and there was no pump system we don't irrigate. The water's purely just for livestock.
I'm curious, what's your annual like rainfall like?
Well, the last couple of years have been extremely wet, but we're normally around 760 millimeters. I'm trying to think off the fly what that is inches. It's 20 something inches, I think.
That's all right. Yeah, I don't
inches.
do 30 inches. That's not
30.
bad. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's not a dry area. Like we have 4 seasons. We don't have wet seasons like what or rather a winter season like what an American would reference, because we don't snow here, but we get below freezing frosts. So it's cold and we're wearing jumpers and gloves sometimes. And summer's very hot, summer's brittle here, so we get well above 100 Fahrenheit. We're like the hottest summers, the hottest weeks here are 43 degrees Celsius, which is it's an assault on the senses. It's really unpleasant. Pretty dry heat though.
Terrible.
Yeah, and so we have normally 4 to 5 months of our farm being brittle. If you do the holistic management with Alan Savory, we would generally have 4 to 5 months of brittle non-growing season. But we grow springs very productive, so we can generally stockpile enough to get through.
So taking over those 5 paddocks and the 100 acres, what was the first thing that you did? Or how did you, did you right away start with cattle, or what was that first step?
So Dad always had cattle. He'd normally just traded in 40 yearling steers, and he'd move them from one paddock to the other for all the good seasons. And then when the feed ran out, he'd open up all the gates and let them forage whatever they could from around the farm, sort of backwards, I guess, when you think about it now in hindsight, but that's just what we're told to do. Very minimal spraying or fertilizer, but he was doing a bit of super, a bit of lime. He'd have a contractor come in and spot spray some broadleaf and that sort of thing. We haven't had any synthetic fertilizer on the farm for about 8 years, and we haven't had any spot spray or herbicide, pesticide for about 6 or 7 years now. And because the last contractors hadn't been for a couple of years before I took over. First thing I did was I actually got on Facebook and bought a caravan for like $400 and stole my dad's 40 chickens that he had in a little barn next to the shed and put them in the caravan, and bought an electric net and started trying to move them around every week. And it was an absolute nightmare in hindsight. The amount of hours I tipped into just 40 chickens, we would run 1,000 chickens now in a quarter of the time compared to what I used to put into those 40 chickens, because I didn't modify the trailer at all. So I just put milk crates on the wall with some bedding in them for them to lay their eggs in. I didn't rip the floor out, so they were just defecating on the floor all night, and I was filling it up with wood shavings and sawdust. I literally just drilled holes in the side of the caravan and stuck branches in it so they could perch on branches. The water was in a drum that I'd have to take up to the house, fill up with a hose, bring back on the forks of the tractor and put it back on the drawbar of the caravan. Everything was an absolute nightmare in hindsight. But at the time, I was loving it. This was not a job for me. This was not an enterprise. This was my hobby that I'd go and do after work and on the weekend. And I just had so much fun watching what the birds would eat and watching the quality of the eggs change through the seasons and mucking out the shed, turning the muck into compost. I just had so much fun with it. And while that was going, we purchased, the farm was empty because coming out of the 2019 drought, it was pretty dry and we destocked. The farm was dust essentially. And we purchased 20 Hereford heifers, which we still had no infrastructure. So I bought a couple polybraid reels and some step-in posts, and I was trying to do daily moves with them as best I could, bearing in mind that we didn't really have water anywhere. So I'd have to fence up these enormous corridors back to dams and little creeks that had little ponds of water in them and stuff. And again, just an absolute nightmare. The efficiency was woeful. The systems were horrible. But I didn't have any intention to do this as a business. I was just trying to grow a bit of produce for my family and I thought it was fun. For me, this was the same as going in your backyard and picking out all the weeds around your carrots and watering them with your kids and having a nice evening in the backyard. This was my version of that.
So, did you ever take pictures of that caravan? Man, I'd love to see a picture of that later.
Yeah, I'll post some stuff up on Twitter. I have shared it on socials occasionally. Whenever those pictures pop up on my Facebook as an annual memory, it normally gives me a reminder to share it and one, I guess, poke a little bit of fun at myself, but two, motivate people that you don't have to start with 1,000 chooks. You don't have to start with 5,000 chooks. Just get the chooks you've already got and move them around.
There you go. So you've got at what stage did you bring the pigs in?
Well, probably not far after that. I bought 2 pigs from friends of mine that have an egg farm down the road, some Berkshires. Oh, sorry, no, they weren't. They were Wessex saddlebacks, lard pigs. And I just threw them in one of the dam paddocks. I'll show you photos of that too, but it was probably a 5-acre paddock, and they just destroyed that paddock. Absolutely tanked the water quality because they were always wallowing on the side of the dam. I wasn't rotationally grazing them. There was no grass in there anyway. I was just feeding them some house scraps. And I used to go down to the local ag shop and buy 20-kilo bags of whole grain wheat and barley and feed it to them, at full retail rate. Just fed them whole seeds, didn't even mill it or crush it or roll it or anything, just had absolutely no idea. And those 2 pigs, when we slaughtered them and ate them, my wife and I said, we feel really good because prior to that we'd been, we cook at home and we make some meals, and I'm not a great cook and my wife is a great cook. And I said, I need a few meals under my belt for when we have kids that I can bring some offerings to the dining table. And my wife's not, they do the gestation, they do labor, then they breastfeed for 2 years. It's like, when are we going to step in and help a little bit? So I thought I'll cook a couple of nights a week. And I was trying to perfect the pork belly. I was online watching Jamie Oliver and Gordon Ramsay, learned a few new swear words. And making these pork bellies, we just always felt sick. We always had indigestion and stomach cramps, and I'd get diarrhea. And after a few months, my wife's like, you got to stop cooking this pork. Like, I just can't handle pork. We've never been big pork eaters before. And then we raised 2 pigs. Why would you raise pigs if you were allergic to pork? It's how it seems, right? But then we started eating that pork, and we found that we felt great afterwards. Not only did we not feel bad, but we actually felt great. And that was a real paradigm moment for us. And that's when we started to think this whole you are what you eat, and you're also what you eat ate. And maybe the welfare and the contextual environment of where that animal's kept has some long-term effect on the quality of the food and the health of the animals, us eating it. And so those pigs, in hindsight, were raised woefully, especially when you can compare it to the standard of what we're doing now with our pigs. But you just have to start, perfection's the enemy of progress. You just need to get out there and give it a go.
So then you had the cows, had the chickens, got the pigs. You have sheep as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've only really got sheep in the last few months. We've about a year ago, we started buying like store lambs, little lambs, live weight around 20 to 25 kilos. And I bought 100 in, and we were moving them. We trained them to hot wire. We'd move them every couple of days. And then when they started hitting slaughter weight, about 50 kilos is when we do that here in Australia. I started sending them through to the butchery. And now next week, I've got no lambs on the farm right now, but next week I've got 80 in-lamb maiden ewes coming to the farm, a shedding composite, which will start to, we're actually going to join them with our cattle and run a flerd just for management's sake, efficiencies, and do our daily move, pardon me. And I'm really excited to getting some lamb on the floor because in Australia, it's a hugely popular meat. And there's 2 reasons I'm putting lambs in. The first reason is my main farmhand, I call him Mr. Michael. His name's Michael, but I call him Mr. Michael because I think it sounds fun. And he always gets a bit shy when I do it. But Mr. Michael's got a lamb background. He was roustabout. He used to shear. He's worked at a lamb feedlot before he's been with me. He's been with me for 3 years now. So since the beginning, essentially, he came on part-time just because he believes in the dream and wanted to work in an environment where it just wasn't plagued by death and pharmaceutical inputs. And we've worked together for years. We've got a great working relationship. So he's sort of been, because he's a lamb guy, sheep guy, he's been pushing me to do it. And then when I did the first lot, I couldn't believe how well it sold and how good the economics are. The timeline is so much faster to cattle, and the cost of processing is, because we've got our own butchery and we're doing our own processing now, the cost and efficiencies of butchering them is so much better, and you can use a lot lower skilled labor to do lamb because there's only a few cuts. There might be 12 different cuts out of a sheep, but a cow's got dozens and dozens of cuts, and it's very labor intensive and skill intensive to figure out properly what you're doing with a beast, with a cow. Sure.
Let's get into the butchery here. So it seems like you solved a problem. At least you have a solution to a problem. There's many solutions, obviously, that every rancher has. It's like, how do I get the most money for my product without having to compromise much on my values? I live in Montana. I see more cows on my way to town than I do houses. And so everyone pretty much does it the same way. Most of it's grass fed, probably grain finished. I haven't asked specifically. But then they're compromising, right? So, and who knows where they sell it to, feedlot, wherever, right? So how did you come up with the idea to do the butchery?
Well, in Australia, the abattoir, which I think you guys call the slaughterhouse or the processing plant, they slaughter the animal, but then it has to be consigned to a local certified boning room, which is where the butchers are. So the abattoir has a truck and it delivers it. So if you want to sell your meat direct to consumer, you need to find a local butcher that'll partner with you and sell you their labor to cut up. This is a great relationship potentially, but I just found it wrought with issues. And I'm not throwing any mud at the great butchers that helped me out along the way, but their volume's small because they've already got a business that they're busy working in, and their focus is filling up their glass cabinet and servicing their customers. And then if you have more volume than what one butcher can handle, you're having to use multiple butchers. So your quality control, your label style, the positioning of the label, the way you want things cryovac bagged or cling wrapped, all falls apart. And as a guy with a retail background, product presentation and consistency means a lot to me. So I just found the whole thing very unsatisfactory. And then you throw the curveball in that we're hippies and we want to do preservative free, and we want to do dry cures, and we want to dry age, and we want to do all this. We want to find the bavette steak out of the beast and all these weird cuts no one's ever heard of. And it just became a little bit too much. And I was chatting to my dad about it. He said, well, you just need to buy your own boning room. And I jumped on commercialrealestate.com or whatever, and there was a butchery freehold building for sale. So there was a business in town called Peters and Sons. It had been a butchery for 75 years. They retired. The son retired, sold the business. The person that bought the business went insolvent after a couple years. And so the owner liquidated all the equipment inside and he was selling the building. And I thought, great, there's 3 cool rooms, 1 walk-in freezer. There's a boning room. It was cheap. I thought I'm going to buy that. I thought it was very well priced for what it was and for what it gave us. So I purchased it, spent way more money renovating it to get it up to code than I thought I would, because I bought it and it had not long been trading, right? But when you're being audited as a going concern, it seems to be a little bit more lax than when you start up with a brand new audit process. So I had to spend a lot of money, way more than I thought, fixing it up, sealing the floor, painting the walls, fixing coving, all of these sorts of simple things. And then I put an ad up, found a fantastic butcher who's still with me today. Richie's been with me for over 2 years now. Now we've got a second butcher in there, Larry, and we're doing all of our own custom processing. So all the beef, pork, chicken, lamb, wild harvest venison that we get comes back to the butchery. The boys know how I want it cut up. I just write a little list. So this week we had 10 pigs and a body of beef come in for us, and I just wrote on the board, I need some pork belly, I need some pork chops, I need some rump steaks, but they're the things I need. But apart from that, you just cut whatever you think the animal lends itself to, whatever the best cut is for, because different animals, if it's a bit of a leaner animal, you might want to do a rolled roast instead of a barbecue chop out of a lamb or something. So I'll let the butchers make those calls generally. And we offer that service for 15 local farms now. So other farms that want to process their meat and go to the farmers markets or something. And we don't have a front of house to worry about in the traditional sense that these other butchers do, where they are our customers. They're not our afterthought. They are our customers. So when they send us 20 lambs or half a dozen pigs or 2 bodies of beef, we know we've got their custom printed label with their logo, with their ingredients list. We know how they like it bagged. We can pack their boxes ready for the courier to pick up. But beyond that, they can pick it up from us and go to the local farmers markets or do their direct-to-consumer door drops. So, that's been very successful, and that keeps my 2 boys busy. I probably would only need a butcher 4-5 days a week just to run our stuff, but this keeps 2 guys in full-time employment. And then after getting all that set up and running for a couple months, I just had this empty retail space out the front, because it's a traditional butchery where they used to have a glass cabinet out the front, an enormous glass cabinet. I had to pull the windows out of the front of the building to get the glass cabinet out. It took 8 fellas to carry it out. It's an absolute nightmare. Those things are, built to last, I tell you. And I just kept looking at it going, this is a waste of space. And a mate sort of dangled a bit of a carrot in front of me to get something going. I said, I'm not interested in doing front of house. Like we don't have the time. We don't have the volume. It's going to add some overheads that I just can't handle. To pay someone to sit there 6 days a week and scan meat in Australia is going to cost me $60,000 a year minimum, let alone the fact that I'm going to have to cover their sick days and holidays and find a second person to cover all their shifts, which will probably be me. And at that time, that year when I was thinking this 2 years ago, our farm was on track to do about $400,000 or $500,000 revenue, and all of that produce was already sold to our wholesale markets and our restaurants and our direct-to-consumer channels. So it's not like I had an extra 500 grand of stock to put out the front. And even if I did sell $500,000 of retail out the front of the store, it still didn't justify to me paying someone to sit there and scan it. I couldn't make it work in my head. And then one day I thought, I just need to make a big vending machine, where people can just walk in, swipe their card and hit J4, and the little twirly spring thing unwinds and a T-bone steak falls down and they pick it out of the bottom. So I got on eBay. I got on Google and had a look around, and there are vending machines where you can do that, but they're small for the volume that I'll in the space I wanted to fill up, and they're very expensive. And proprietary mechanical devices like that, in my experience, lend themselves to a lot of really expensive repairs all the time.
Yes.
So I was less interested in that. And then I thought, I need to build something myself. So I sleuthed around, couldn't find much. But what we ended up doing was taking the security entry system from a 24-hour gym. You turn up to your 24-hour gym and you can hit your fob and it unlocks the door, or you can have a unique code and you can get in the door. So we got a custom-built door with a gym-styled entry system. I put some security cameras in the building. I lined the walls with upright glass-doored freezers, about 12,000 litres worth of space. And I found an app online called Express Checkout by a company called Future Proof Retail. And the customers just download the app on their phone for free. So their hardware becomes the checkout device. And they open the app when they're in the building. They scan the barcodes of all the packaged meat that's in the freezers. They hit pay and it syncs up to Apple Pay or Google Pay, or they can edit in their debit card details. Comes to us through Stripe. We lose about 2.5% to 3% in fees between Express Checkout and Stripe. And then they let themselves out of the building. Big Brother's watching on the cameras the whole time. And that's been going for almost 2 years now. It'll be 2 years in April.
That sounds awesome. That's amazing that you just kind of like worked through the problem, but you had to go through the steps of like looking for a meat vending machine, right? And
yeah,
you're like, man, this just isn't going to work. And man, I just love that problem solving. That's awesome. Love that.
Well,
just taking like off the shelf stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And every liability that you're faced with is the opportunity to create an asset solution, because you're not the only person that has this issue, this gap in production, this liability. And they're all opportunities. Like when the stock market crashes, that's when all the traders get the richest. Like the people that know what they're doing, they've taken that liability moment and then turned it into an asset. Same with housing busts. So in our farm and in all my businesses, when there's issues, systems that are clunky, customers that are dissatisfied, products that aren't working, we need to look at them with an open mind, not be steeped in your own prejudice and bias, and go, how can I weaponize this problem and create it into an asset for our business? And that's what we've done with the 24/7 butchery. And just to give a little bit of more context to your listeners who might not have heard about the system before, the memberships to the butchery are free. To get a membership, you have to come and do one of my free farm tours. I've been doing free farm tours at least monthly on my farm for 3 years now. We have 40 to 50 people come every month. And then during the month, I also have school tour groups, special interest groups like mums clubs and homeschool groups and all this sort of thing. And once you've done a farm tour with me, which is normally about 3 hours long, we go around and we look at all the production models and we talk about the factory farm systems and where we differ and why we differ. If you finish that tour and you'd like to be a member, then I give you your unique code, which costs you nothing, and you can gain entry. And I do that to proof people, to screen people a little bit. I also do it so when they walk in the butchery and they see the price of the goods and maybe the inconsistent supply of the goods, they can understand all these things because they've They've literally stood in front of me for 3 hours and listened to me wear my heart on my sleeve about why these systems are the way they are. And it's just been working really well. We're 2 years in now. We've had no theft in the system. So telling your story, being honest, operating with integrity, and letting your community buy into your story is extremely powerful. What
really drew me to you is that I saw the infamous video at this point, right? Of you going through, like, giving like a little tour of your butchery, and like it just looks super clean, crisp, like well done, very nicely displayed. And then I'm like, wow, this is awesome. This could be applied to almost anything. And then in the comments, people are like retweeting it and blah, 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 oh, there's, way to take jobs away from people and blah, blah, blah. And I like the way that you fired back at them. Because people just kind of complain like that there's not enough jobs. Like that's not true right now. Like today, like if anybody that wants a job can go get a job. It's not the number of jobs. It's the quality of the jobs. And like what you took away is like, oh, so like you're saying that farmers shouldn't get, like the people that, raise their product shouldn't get paid a fair rate. So instead of it being the number of jobs, it's like the quality, like shouldn't you get paid for your labor, like what it's actually worth, instead of like having to like it get chiseled out from what the consumer pays to what the rancher actually gets paid. I mean, there's a big difference. Like, let's make up that gap. I like that.
100%. And there's so many topics that people gave me some grief about. And to be clear, it was 99.5% support. But everyone's saying, great job. You've done a good thing. Thanks, whatever it was. I just gave them a thumbs up or a pat on the back or thank you very much and moved on, because it's sort of weird to bask in congratulatory speech. It's strange. But this is to riff on what I said earlier. Every liability is an untapped asset. When people are slagging your business, your decisions, and your integrity in public, potential liability. But you've got a platform and an opportunity to plead your case. And it's not about fighting with the nupties, because the person you're actually engaging with, you're never going to change their mind, because the way the internet works is you just continuously double down. And then when you got nowhere else to go, you block them.
That's true.
But the other people reading the comments, that video has a couple thousand comments on TikTok and 1 million views. So there's a lot of people that are reading it and watching it and not commenting. So you've got a platform now where you can address the critics and put whatever argument you want forward. And a lot of people are going to read it. So I engage with those people in good faith, not because I'm so concerned about changing their mind and opinion of me, but just so other people read it, go, oh yeah, he is ruining jobs by having an automated butchery. Oh no, he actually said that he values stewardship on his farm hire and would rather redirect all the saved labor onto his farm to steward his animals and his environment to a higher level. Yeah, that makes sense. I understand that now. And they keep strolling. So I got spanked for a heap of different reasons, and they were all a nonsense. If you could rub two brain cells together, you could understand. I'm giving everybody my full financials and all my reasoning. I've got nothing to hide. And it was the strangest thing for me is, obviously these people don't know my personal situation, but I employ 50 people in the local region through my other businesses. And to be assaulted for being a job destroyer when my track record is a payroll that's over $30,000 a week was a really strange feeling. I'm like, I employ heaps of people, and I'm really proud about the fact that my family does this, and we do it reasonably well. Like, we've got a good track record with it. And it's just, I had somebody email me this morning a little bit of hate mail, which I'm getting more and more, which is fine, and said, go smoke more crack, you cocaine addict. And I'm thinking, I've never even smoked a cigarette. It's just a weird thing to say to somebody. Like, what about me screams crack addict? I'm almost as straight edge as you could become.
That is so odd. That is such a weird. They took the time to write that, of all things.
Oh, that was the sign off line. It was a big email. I've read it out loud. I've presented it like a speech to 3 or 4 people so far because I find it so humorous.
That is pretty funny. I'm gonna have to go find that.
I'll screenshot the email and I'll send it to you after the chat.
Right.
You can post it on your timeline if you want.
All right, thanks. Yeah. What's funny is the people that complain about the jobs, I guarantee you that they're pain in the ass employees wherever they work. Like they don't
100%.
Yeah, that's just they don't get it.
So they don't create any jobs, and they're most likely painful employees. And if you click on their profiles, it's all, communist hammer and sickles and all this sort of stuff. But to be honest, all that's fine, and I don't mind addressing it. But at the end of the day, for me, it all becomes a distraction, and I've sort of stopped engaging in it to a degree because I'm here to advocate for better farm systems, treating animals better, healing landscapes, feeding families food that heals their bodies. So to argue about job creation in my 24/7 butchery, although there's a discussion to be had there, it is a distraction as to what we're driving towards as a farm business.
So a little bit more about the butchery and the farm. What role does your wife play in the business?
Oh, my wife's the matriarch of the Wolki world. Our company name's actually Wolki World Proprietary Limited here in Australia. So I guess there would be no farm business if it wasn't for my wife, Anne, because the health journey would never have started. I'm 6 foot tall, and when we got married, I was 103 kilos. And like I said earlier, I wasn't a picture of health. And my wife's a beautiful, in shape lady, and she is a picture of health. And what she saw in me begs to be discovered. And I feel incredibly grateful and blessed that she'd stooped to my level to join me in holy matrimony. But I have no doubt that I would be if I didn't meet and marry my wife, I'd be a hardworking, diligent young man, and I'd probably be 130 kilos and chronically ill. I would just, for me, when I'm busy, I just eat. I just shove food in my face, and I like being busy, and I don't want to think about what I eat. That's just the way I'm wired. So there would be no farm business if it wasn't for my wife coaching me along on this lifestyle journey. And then in the actual day-to-day of the business now, she does all of our pickling and preserving. So everything that comes out of our market garden and orchard, we basically can value add to shelf stable products. Because when you've got a tree giving you 80 kilos of peaches, one in a 1 week window, one time a year, it's really hard to market that. We don't go to farmers markets because in our area they're an absolute waste of time. They're very quiet, and I wouldn't give up my weekend for the effort. We've tried. We've done a lot of them, and we're not interested anymore. So what do you do with these peaches? Well, you preserve them and you value add to them, and then they can sit on the shelf the next 6 months, and you've got pickles for 6 months, and all of a sudden you've got a product that you can offer year on year. So my wife does all of that. She's an amazing home cook. We ran an event at our farm 2 weekends ago called the Australian Beef Initiative with some local beef gurus, some health gurus, some Bitcoin gurus. All these people came together. It was just an awesome event. We had 100 people on the farm for the day. And I guess I was involved in conceiving that event and painting the big picture of the vibe, who we're going to attract, how it was going to work. And my wife created the poster. She created the Eventbrite description. She released the tickets for sale. She organized the hire chairs, the hire misting fans. She did all the catering. She hired all the staff. She organized emptying the shed and setting it up like an event space. Like, she did everything, because I'm like, I was there with her that whole thing, but she really took the lead on that, because I'm sort of a bit distracted in my head. I want to go to the butcher and pack orders and get on Facebook and sell another ton of sausages and do all that business stuff. So I just sort of big picture and deadlines, and my wife's a lot more organized, and she's a force of nature. All this, mind you, while she's 20 weeks pregnant with our third child.
That's awesome. Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good setup to have those, because it'd be, if you two were too similar, I feel like it would just be like a bunch of headbutting. Like, no, I want to, arguing over details, but the fact that you guys can work together, but also have your own like areas you're focused on, that works pretty well.
Well, you want to be your complementary opposite, don't you? And I'm big picture, she's details, and our values are aligned. So if you marry somebody with aligned values, like theoretically, I would argue that the person you marry should probably vote similar, have similar opinions on the way you want your family to look, the activities you want, the way you manage your finances, and those things should be organized and discussed. And ideally, they should be the reason that you're attracted to each other in the first place before you sign on the dotted line and get along with it.
That's very, very true. Yeah, that's fantastic. That because when I messaged you about like, hey, I also want to ask, like, curious how much involvement your wife was in, because this little thing that I do, what we're doing right now, like my wife is watching the kids right now. I couldn't have the two of them running around in here screaming and trying to pull down the microphone or whatever. So I mean, just see where the help comes in. So
absolutely.
Has anyone tried to copy your business model yet?
With the butchery?
Yeah.
I've probably had 100 people message me, how do you do it? I want to know how to do it. Every single, depending on how busy I was at the time, I've given them all slightly different answers. If I was real busy, I just sent them my mobile number and I said, call me tomorrow. Most of them never called, never followed up again. I've had other moments where I've sent them decent length emails with information. Some people I've just given dot point. Really, if I was efficient, I'd just write a little A4 page about it and I just flick everyone a link every time the question came in. But I've had 2 farmers, one in Australia and one in America, that I have got to the stage where I've Zoomed them and we've sat online and we've spoken face-to-face about the ins and outs of it for about 90 minutes each. And this is all free. I haven't charged any time or consulting because I'm just really interested to see if anyone else can pull it off. But at this stage, no one that I know of. There's been 10 people also make pretty bold statements. We're going to do this 100%. We're committed, but I haven't seen any, personally haven't seen any progress or results of that yet, but it's early days. It's really not difficult. Like what I said before was exactly what we do. We have a 24-hour gym door entry system. We use an app called Express Checkout that feeds into Stripe, and we've got surveillance cameras. That's it. That's all it is.
No, it would almost be too arrogant to just to tell someone, it's like, yeah, just look me up. I've covered this probably 50 times already, because like just looking for a little like research to listen to other podcasts. I don't even know how many times your name came up. I think I asked you.
You sort of become a little bit of a on one hand, doing all these podcasts and having this media flurry, you do talk about the same talking points all the time, but it is a really great opportunity to hone your blade, sharpen your axe and try to figure out the best way to articulate your message. So I'm incredibly grateful for all the platforms, big and small. Like I've been on some pretty decent Mickey Mouse, good audience podcasts and some smaller ones, and they're all lots of fun to me. And probably the best thing I get out of all of them is networking with the actual interviewer and building. So, after this, we're buddies. We've been speaking for an hour and a half. We sort of know each other better than most people that just pass each other on the internet. So I think that's lots of fun.
That is. So it's just your products in the butchery. Is that right?
Out the front, we're only selling Wolki Farm products. We're not selling any of the other farmers because we just don't need their produce. Yep. That all goes out the back. That all gets processed and out the back door back to their consumers. We are very close as a business, with the way our websites are and our sales are and everything. If I haven't spent a cent, like I've done a few Facebook sponsored ads years gone by, but in the last 12 months, I haven't spent a cent on marketing. On our website, I've got, the Google Pixel built into the back of the website for Facebook. I've got lead ads and funnels ready. We've got the shopping cart. It's pretty basic, but we're adding more items to it. I'm not giving, people can't buy a Scotch and a porterhouse and a pack of mints. They're going to be buying 10-kilo mixed beef box or, just mix things. I can't do all this cut by cut stuff and I'm not interested in it. And I'm not finding that I need to. And we currently accept Australian dollar. We're also going to be accepting Bitcoin on the website shortly because I'm sort of becoming more and more involved in that community here in Australia. But there is so much demand that I really believe as soon as I turn on the AdWords spend and direct market some people in Melbourne, which is our closest city to us, it's 3 hours south of us on the main highway, I can just feel it going berserk. Like I'm packing, 5-6 boxes a day at this point without any advertising. And that's basically got us on the limit of our production. Now, obviously, I can ramp our production, but what's the lag time for ramping beef production? You know, if you want to do it in a organic sense, that's not going to require a huge amount of cash flow. I've got to breed cows, retain the steers and heifers, and get them to slaughter weight. We're talking 2.5, 3 years. If I want to do it really quick and buy in yearling steers and then do daily moves and grass finish them on my farm for 6 or 8 months, that's a lot quicker, but it's an absolute cash flow suck buying in all these animals. You know, and then you got other enterprises that I can scale really quick, like chicken. I can scale chicken in 50 days and I can have more chicken. Lambs pretty quick, pigs exceptionally good. But something I put to my customer base publicly, because I like to have these conversations publicly. So I went on all my socials and I said, guys, this is where we're at. You, our customers that have been supporting us since 2019 when we started, what would you like? Would you like us to remain 100% Wolki farm produce? We grow and we raise everything as best we can, but we have clunky supply and we're not able to meet the market? Or would you rather me buy carcasses over the hook of other local producers that I already work with? I've already got a business relationship with them through the butchery and I'm impressed with how they manage their animals. How would you feel about me buying that over the hook and selling that under the label? And 100% of the feedback I received from all social areas was, Jake, we trust you to go after these other farms and purchase their material. And it was twofold. It was one, because it's going to mean you can keep our supply and we want the supply coming. And we trust you because of how honest and transparent you are about things. Like, I think if they'd all heard that I'd been doing that for 6 months, all of them would have been disappointed. But the fact that I've had this conversation openly first is an asset. And then secondly, they were all excited that these other local businesses were going to get supported, because most of the businesses that I custom process for still sell a large amount of their animals into the commodity market at the end of the year. Their direct-to-consumer model might only be taking up 10, 20, 50% of their supply. They can't put it all through for a range of different reasons. So if I could soak that up and get them a few extra dollars through the bank, that was something that my customers were open about. So we're just in the we haven't done that yet. We're in the process of figuring out what that looks like. But maybe it's just as simple as the logo being slightly different. So instead of Wolki Farm, grass-fed beef, maybe it says Wolki Farm and Friends, grass-fed beef, or something like that. And then you go to our website, and down the bottom of our grass-fed page, there's a profile on the 2 other local producers that don't drench. They do holistic grazing management, and a bit of a profile on them saying these are the people that we rely on when our supplies dry up.
That's interesting. Because that's how if I were to do it here, which I'm very interested, I'm trying to work through okay, where would I even do it? You know, in the area that I'm at, you know, what's the infrastructure like? I would bring in multiple producers that you'd have to verify, you know, their integrity to their livestock and their land. Just what they say that they put into their feed. Like, is it organic? Do they actually grain finish when they said that it's grass finish? You know, all these things. But I think it'd be a good way to help, like you said, lift up other producers as well.
And these are hard conversations to have with farms when you're onboarding them. These are conversations I'm having now, because people get offended. If you say, oh, so, you know, what's your parasite management for your cattle on the farm? You know, how do you handle that? And they go, well, you know, we just use a backline drench once a year. So, look, you know, for the last 4 years, we've told our customers that we don't drench, and they get offended. Oh, what would you rather our cows have worms? Would you rather them be sick? Sort of like, well, no, you know, there's other methods. You could move them to fresh pasture more often. And all of a sudden, if they're having the drench, you know that they're not controlling their grazing plan and their landscapes the best they could be. And it's a challenging conversation to have people. I guess the leg up that I have on this is I've been processing for 15 local farmers the last 2 years. And I already know half of them, and personally through this working relationship, and I know that they do it beautifully. Like, I've been to their farms, I've visited them, I process their meat, I know the quality of their meat, and they're great people with great production models. So I'm not having to go cold calling. I'm just able to sort of fall back on pre-existing relationships. But that's something that you've got to do. You've got to qualify. You've got to have a standard. You've got to qualify that with your customers. Make sure that's what they want. and then you've got to onboard with integrity.
That's man, that is quite the advantage. Like you kind of hit all the right steps. Like you found the butchery like that to be bought. Like you were just looking for one, and one happened to be available, and then you had the butcher shop, and then took advantage of that front space to turn into your meat vending machine, and then you have all these other connections with other producers as well. I think you shouldn't have any trouble being able to fill those freezers.
Yeah, it'll be. I think it's going to be good. It's going to be a good thing for the local region. It's going to help other farmers level up their direct-to-consumer production.
When you do open to the public days, what's the turnout like?
Well, I do monthly free farm tours, but I make people go online and book a ticket. They're a free ticket, but I found that if I do a tour with more than 40 to 50 people, the tour becomes clunky. The people at the back of the group, they dawdle, which makes the whole tour take longer because they walk slower. And then when we get to the pork enterprise and we're talking about the pigs in the paddock, they're chitter-chattering up the back, and it ruins the engagement of the group as a whole. The people at the front are less likely to engage. This is something I've noticed through years of doing them. So now I cap them at about 40 tickets, and they all sell out. Like every tour we have always books out at 40 tickets. And last year in September, we did a open farm discovery day. We wanted to just have no RSVP, no cost. We got egg and spoon race, bobbing apple race. I really wanted to make it like a spring fair event for families to come, and I'm really passionate about the farm becoming the community hub. There's not many community areas. Like all the fates are sort of dawdling out of, and the circus isn't what it used to be. And I really think the farms have an amazing opportunity to launch themselves into these community spaces, which is going to benefit everyone. So we just said, let it rip, come along. There's a sausage sizzle where you can pay your $2 and get a sausage. And we had over 400 people come to that day.
Jeez. Do you ever do... Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say the car park in the front of the property was full, and there was cars, parked on the street, 250 meters long, all on both sides of the street. It was awesome. If you were flying into Albury, it would have stuck out. You would have gone, what's going on over there today?
That's awesome. Do you ever do your butchery open to the public days?
Yeah. So before the last couple months where it was all crazy with all this media around the butchery, and then we had a few big events, we were just about to start doing open days in the butchery monthly. We've been doing them quarterly. So it's just a Saturday. We're open 8 till 2. You can pay cash. You can pay credit card. You can use the app. Come up. No membership required. Doors open. Ian's out the front. Again, doing a beautiful sausage sizzle with our snags and our sauerkraut and local cheese and all this sort of stuff. And we're about to fall back into that stride because they're a lot bigger. They're a lot better for us to go into a farmers market. If we open the doors for a day and do a couple specials, 20% off sausages, and I just look at my oversupplies and I go little discount here, big discount here, we do sort of anywhere from $5,000 to $7,000 revenue in those 5 or 6 hours. So it's a lot of people, well, not a lot, but some people just don't want the membership. They don't want their details on the system, or they think it might be too difficult for them or confusing. And so this way they're allowed to come in and access the meat and buy up for the next couple of months if they need to. And ironically, a lot of the people that have that opinion, when they actually turn up and see how easy it is, because I'm giving demos all day long, they generally sign up as well, because it might be confronting. You get a code and you let yourself in and you download the app, but it's so easy.
That's actually a pretty good way to get people signed up. That's pretty smart. So then the new people that you sign up, eventually they have to come take a tour, or if they've been in the door, they've already taken a tour of your place?
We've let, to date, if you've come to the butchery for one of the butcher open days, we've let them sign up as well. Because again, it's a qualifying thing. They've got to see the produce in the cabinet. They get to talk to us. We've got pictures on the wall of all our animals, and we talk. It's not just, hi, how are you? Would you like to be a member? It's a real sort of vibey chit chatter,
Sure.
bustling couple hours. So we feel that it's on, good enough to let people buy in.
It's like a virtual tour.
Yeah, I've done that
Nice.
too.
Have you ever looked at the analytics of your members, like to see who's a member but who hasn't bought from you in 6 to 12 months or anything like that, and have to call them up and be like, "Hey, like, what's up?"
So we would have about 400 people with memberships at the moment, and there would be about 75 to 80, so just under a quarter, that have actually never activated their membership. So they've wanted it, they've come to a tour, they've asked for it, I've sent them an email, and they've just never turned up. So now when I send people their induction, I tell them that their code's got a 30-day activation period, and if they don't do a purchase in those first 30 days, it'll expire. And they can always contact me again, and we can roll that again. But I think that's fair.
I think so.
We've got about a quarter, so about 100 again, that are reasonably active. So they'd be through every 4 to 6 weeks. And then we've probably got about, I'd say 20 or 30 that are hyperactive in there multiple times a week, doing the bulk of the purchasing. And then there's a lot of I've got one guy that comes in once every sort of 4 to 6 weeks because he lives up in Sydney, which is 6 hours away, but he drives for a job. So he comes through. But every time he comes through, he buys $1,000 of pork because he takes it home. He's a Chinese man, and all of his family at home is mad about our pork. So, China are big pork eaters, and this guy's a pork connoisseur. He was telling me he almost figured out what breeds of pigs we use and everything based on the way the pork looked and the flavor of it. Everything. It was really interesting the first time I met him.
No way.
So, so he's awesome. He's not a frequent shopper. But he's a big spender, and so everyone's got their own thing. But I think I do need to get a little bit better at. I need to automate a way to drop people off the back. I think, like if you've been in once in 12 months and it's obvious you're not interested, I think it should just void your number. And if you want to sign up again, let's have that conversation. But I think that's something that I need to improve on.
Sure. I mean, you're going through all this work just to get people to sign up and have engagement because, there's a lot of benefit for both you and the consumer. And so for them to just kind of fall off the track, essentially, like that was a lot of effort for nothing. They wasted their time too. So, that's...
Yeah, but I don't look at it as a waste because they've still done a farm tour. They still understand what pastured eggs are, and they understand,
sure,
the difference between confinement factory, feedlotting of pigs, and that tour there was 40 other people. So I don't look at it as a waste.
So you brought up the beef initiative a little bit ago. So that must have been 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
How was that? How'd that go?
It was great. We had Texas Slim from Texas come and give a presentation. He's doing a bit of a tour here in Australia. He's heading up, and he's the founder of the Beef Initiative in the USA. We're also had a couple of doctors come and give presentations. So a quite notable doctor here in Sydney, he's a gastroenterologist, Dr. Pran Yoganathan, came, and he just had an awesome presentation just talking about a species-appropriate diet for humans, basically. And then we had another local doctor who's a GP, Max Goldhain, who's got a podcast that I've been on a couple of times called, he's going to kill me if I forget it. Is it called a Holistic Health Podcast? He gave a presentation on seed oils and compared them to animal fats. And we sold out of all of our tallow 10 minutes after his presentation, and did about $800 worth of tallow just like that. It was hilarious. That was really cool. And it was a great day. We had a journalist from the ABC, which is the local, I guess, like state-based radio, TV, newspaper show. So they've done quite an extensive write-up that I shared on Twitter earlier that you can read. And interestingly, they said that we were a little bit fringe and we were anti-government and anti-health industry, and conveniently forgot to note that there was 2 doctors speaking at the event. And there was another, 4 or 5 doctors notable doctors in the audience who were participating and giving feedback, and they weren't just hiding their ranks in the back row there. But it was a great day, awesome food, did a big farm tour at the start of the day, community. I had people come to me at the end of the event. I had a couple people come up to me in tears. One lady said, I finally found my tribe. I've never found people that were on the same page in regards to diet and all these different things. I had another lady say, I've been wanting to quit my job, start farming, and this has given me the push. I'm done. I'm gonna cash out. And like they're really cool. They're quite momentous milestones in these people's lives, and to have been the farm community center that could have facilitated those meetings and those gatherings is powerful. Like, this is better than Google AdWords, in my opinion. We get boots on the ground, make new friends. Your friends won't become your customers, but your customers will become your friend. Matt, if you start this butchery and you try to get your cousins and your aunties and uncles and your high school friend involved, I almost guarantee you most of them just won't be interested. It's really challenging as a business owner. You've got all these friends who want to give you a pat on the back and say you're doing a good job, but when the rubber hits the road, it's very hard to get friends and family especially involved in these things. But you will attract like-minded people that share values, and they'll very quickly become your friend circle. Like, all of our nearest, dearest friends that my wife and I share, just about all of them now, we met on farm tours, which is just, I think, it shows you how powerful the farm is.
Yeah, that's very true. Now, going through like all these tours that I do locally here, like, yeah, I know that guy. Like, we're friends. Like, I don't, other than I have everyone else is more like an acquaintance. We're like, into raising chickens, buying good beef, buying good pork, buying good lamb. Those are priorities for us. And you get to know your farmer, get to know your rancher. So, and to summarize, how would you label the beef initiative? What, for those that aren't familiar with it?
Well, I guess it's a group of like-minded people that want to defend beef. Beef is a superfood. Cows are not bad for the environment. Bad management of cows is a negative toll on the environment. But animals are the environment, so they can't just be default bad for the environment. So there's a little bit of apologetics there. We want to defend beef. We also want to shore up supply. So we want to build a decentralized network where we have access to beef for our families, for other people in the community that are interested in that. And so all that means is we just want to motivate and give a heap of other small producers the tools and the market access that they can start selling direct to consumer. So the beef initiative, when the website eventually launches, it's going to have functionality where you can look on a map at where you are and find all the local farmers that sell direct, and you can just contact them and do a private sale. It doesn't have to be through the platform. We're not here to make bank out of it, but also giving those farmers that market access for people to find them, helping them navigate the legal framework. Like, the first time I sent an animal to slaughter, it was very confusing. Multiple phone calls to the butcher, multiple phone calls to the abattoir. They're all busy calling the state food inspectors, and they're all giving you slightly different answers. Once you've done it, like, these things took me weeks to figure out. Same as getting my egg stamp because in Australia you need to have an egg license to stamp your eggs for retail sale. That took me probably 100 hours of pulling my hair out, figuring out what infrastructure and what paperwork I needed. Now I've helped other farmers get their egg stamp. I've given them a 1 hour chit chat, and then they've basically done everything they need to do to get it that afternoon. Like, it's not difficult. It's just complicated. And if you have people that you can reference off and learn from, it's a lot easier. So it's a big community. If these people want a bit of help figuring out the market and how it all works, we talk to them, we coach it through it, tell them what a reasonable price for packaging is, maybe help them benchmark the pricing of where their food should be and how to market. So it's a co-op of helping facilitate market access and market demand, and helping those forces find each other. And Bitcoin's a part of that. So it's not Bitcoin centric. You don't have to be a Bitcoiner as an alternative currency or store of value. You can come on and you can spend Australian dollars. I'm sure half of these farmers would give you a quarter of a beef for a day's labor on their farm, or whatever. You could pay probably gold bullion or whatever you want, swap them a couple of chickens. But Bitcoin's there if you want it. And I'm finding in my business that advertising you accept Bitcoin makes you a bit of a magnet because there's people out there that want to spend it. So they're buying beef off me, not necessarily because my beef's the best or the most convenient or the best price, but purely because I trade the way that they want to trade. And that's just me meeting the market. And you don't have to be a Bitcoiner to do that. You can receive that Bitcoin and cash it out for the day rate straight away. No issues. You don't have to be holding all this cryptocurrency or, whatever sort of headspace you're in about it.
So are you pretty new to Bitcoin then?
For me, it's probably been about a year since I bought my first sats, and probably the last 4 months where I've really started understanding how Bitcoin's different to other cryptocurrencies. And the boys in the Australian Beef Initiative have been integral to holding my hand through that journey, because I get bored pretty quick watching these long-winded techie tutorials on YouTube.
Sure. How old are you?
32.
Oh, nice. Same. So yeah, I'm with you, where it's just like, man, I do not know what you're talking about, and I do not have the patience to hit rewind to try to figure it out right now. Like if I'm interested, I'm gonna go listen to something else, and then maybe it'll click. But yeah, it's a very slow burn for me to come on board that way.
Well, to orange pill people, orange pill is what the industry says to convert people to Bitcoin, and that's not my agenda. I'm animal systems, right? I'm not orange pilling. I don't care about defending employment, whatever it is.
Beef pilling.
Animal systems. That's right, beef pilling. But to start people on their journey is not telling them how good or useful Bitcoin is, because it's not the mainstream currency. It's more difficult, I guess, to get involved and use. You have to go out of your way. But you can make people understand how crappy the current financial system is and start them that way. So what's the US national debt at the moment? I think it's like
32 trillion.
And I think if you roll all future obligations into that, like the current projected pensions and future bills, I think it's over $200 trillion if you put all obligations into it and interest.
Sure.
And what conversation has the American government and policy writers had about paying that debt down?
None. They just want to keep extending it.
Same here in Australia. We haven't had a surplus since our Prime Minister John Howard was in governance, and it used to be. I remember 10 years ago on elections, they'd be talking about writing a new budget that was going to pay down the debt. Now there's no conversation in any Western country about paying down the national debt. It's about more services, more support, more money. And where does it come from? They tax us and they print more of it. And they tax us by taking it out of our income, which is one thing. We want services, we want roads, we want hospitals. And if you're happy with your tax rate, that's fine. But when they print more of it as well, they're putting more money into the system and they're devaluing your purchasing power. It's another tax. Canada had, if you look up the true inflation of Canada last year, not the reported inflation, but you can see online third-party real inflation, because the inflation basket, they don't count everything that actually impacts your life. Was it Canada or the UK? I think it was the UK, actually. It was 15 or 16%. So if you had $100 in the bank at the start of the year, at the end of the bank, your purchasing power is $85. And this system's not going to fix itself if there's no conversation. There's never going to be action to fix it, because there's not even a conversation about it. And the track record speaks for itself. And this has been an exacerbated problem ever since we debased the dollar and took it off the gold standard. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm some financial expert and some same authority. But when you can just print more of it and you're unaccountable, like I personally know, I've got a friend who's from Zimbabwe. He's a little bit younger than me. And his parents, which were business owners over there, had a trucking company. They lost their entire net worth twice in their lives. They're still alive because of hyperinflation. They went to bed one night, business and savings and equity all going fine. They woke up the next morning, 4,000% inflation overnight, lost everything. My friend had enough for a house deposit and he woke up and he couldn't afford a bicycle. And that's because the government printed too much money and lost control of their... and this happens all over the world. And it's happening now. It happened to Greece a couple of years ago. So it's not about being a conspiracy theorist or or wanting to cheat the government out of anything. It's nothing like that. It's just like the financial system we have is obviously sick and broken. No one's having a conversation how to fix it. And at least the people involved in Bitcoin are aware of this. And, they're just trying to offer an alternative. And I think that the alternative that they offer is the best presented to date.
I agree with that. It brought up a lot of hard conversations about money that until recently, I don't think were really being had. At least not in like as wide as they're being spoken about today.
Well, no one's going to get elected on paying down the debt, because by default, to pay down the debt, they're going to have to cut services, and no one's getting elected on cutting services. Even if they're good services, bad services, controversial services, everyone wants more services, so it's just a slow burn. Anyway, that's the start of the rabbit hole. If the current system sucks, you have to, and that's something that's important to you. You have an obligation to yourself to explore what else is out there.
Sure. Do you really weird question? Do you have Bitcoin saved for either of your kids and your future children?
I don't have Bitcoin saved for my children. Both of my sons have fiat bank accounts. And when I get home at the end of the day, we rattle out a bit of cash out of my pocket and I split it up between them. And they put it in their piggy banks. They're both still in the mindset where they want the largest coin. They haven't figured out the $2 coin's worth more than the 50-cent one, because the 50-cent one's 4 times bigger. And I just sort of let that. I'd rather them not fight over who gets the most value. So we just divvy it out based on size. They've both got share portfolios. So we've set them up with index funds when they were bought, and we put a little bit of, like, my 5-year-old Otto has done extraordinarily well in the last 5 years out of his index funds. And when family wants to give us something for a present for our children, we'll say, if you like, we're not wanting for toys. We don't need for, I don't want these little toys that are plastic and backlit and make noises all night long when you step on them when you're trying to get to bed. So I'm like, let us handle the toys. If you want to give us $50, we'll buy some shares for the kids and, let it sit there. Because I'm newer to Bitcoin and figuring it all out, it's just the family's holdings at the moment. But I'm definitely not opposed to setting it up for the children. But it's not about a free ride for the children. It's about financial literacy and understanding. When Otto's first piggy bank, we rated it about over a year ago. I said, do you want to put this in your bank and save it? And tried my best to explain to a 4-year-old at the time what saving was. Or do you want daddy to buy you a beehive and we can work on the beehive together? And then when you get the honey, you can either eat it, give it away as presents, or sell it. And he goes, I want a beehive, music to my ears. We got a little business.
That's so awesome.
So we went and bought a beehive. So it's about financial literacy. That's a time pit for me in an economic sense, like helping him with that. But that's what life is, holding your children's hand and teaching them, instead of just turning the TV on and going, sit down, mummy and daddy are tired from being at work all day. Just sit down and be nice to your brother and watch Tom and Jerry. It's about letting them make mess, doing things slowly with them and giving them that leg up.
So, man, but now we're getting into the homestead, the homeschooling aspect here. So, man, teaching a 5-year-old. So what's his hands-on as far as like the bees and that specific aspect?
Oh, he's got his own bee suit. I've got a video. I'll put it on Twitter later for you. I've got a video where we were catching a swarm last year that was just up on the tree line. Like, we live next to the bush here. And so there was a swarm on this this wooden gate, and he's running around it with the smoker, smoking the bees while I'm brushing them into the nucleus. And he's very, very brave. He's been stung a couple times and just gets on with business. He's not afraid of it. He understands where the honey comes from, how they get it, why we need to build the boxes bigger. Like, he gets right in there. Beekeeping's heavy work. So a lot of it's watching. You got to scale it down for the children. It's not about not having them involved because it's easy without them. It's like, okay, hand me the grips now so I can pull this frame out. Give daddy the lid back. Otto, go scratch up some pine needles off the floor so I can fill the smoker back up. He's 5 years old. He lights the smoker for me. But people are just absolutely aghast at giving their children lighters and knives. If you've got a 5-year-old boy, there's nothing he wants more than a lighter and a knife. Give him the lighter and knife, but just teach him how to use it and supervise him. When I need a lighter to light the fire, I don't even know where they are in the house. I ask Otto when he runs off and gets me my little Zippo.
That's perfect.
But we you know, we're homeschoolers, as you said. That's what we're working towards. And Otto should have theoretically in Australia started school this year. We're delaying him a year because we don't see the point. We think he'll get more value out of coming to work with me like he does most of the week and actually doing hands-on learning than sitting in a classroom in this like glorified daycare sitting, being told he's too noisy, sit still, keep your hands to yourself, which is my experience of 11 years of schooling. And we give our children a lot of freedom, much to the aghast of some of our peers, but we've also got harder stop boundaries, also much to the disgust of our peers. They seem to not like the way we do everything, even though they're always complimenting on how well behaved and well rounded our children are. But what I mean by that is he's got a lot of freedom. So the freedom is here's your lighter. If we want to go out the back and light the fire pit and cook some dinner on it tonight, we're going to teach you how to use it safely. Here's where the newspaper is. Here's where the kindling is. You can start it here. And, now he's been doing that supervised for a year. Like, you don't just do this overnight. You don't just give a kid a lighter and teach him how to light. This is first he watches dad do it. And then he hands me the straw. And then next time he hands me the kindling. And then one day he puts his hand in and holds the lighter with me. And then a few weeks later, he gets to I take the safety off and he zips. Like, this is a progression, right? It's not just here the lighter, go be a good boy. But eventually you get to the point where you've got this competent child that can do it. But if you ever burn something you're not meant to, the lighter's gone. If you ever use the lighter without telling dad you're about to use it, the lighter's gone. If you ever purposely burn your brother, the lighter's gone. And there's other consequences in our house that aren't popular either. But guess what? I've never followed through with anything once because he's never done it, because he knows the right way to handle it. That's fun enough because it's pretty riveting. And he knows that the consequences are real and he'd rather the freedom, but the consequences that are there are real. If he misbehaves with that lighter, the lighter's gone and there's other privileges and there's other prices to pay for that behavior. And we're not to preach, to the converted, I'm sure, but we're in a society where it's untoward to have consequences for your children, but then we've got children that can't be given any privileges because they can't be trusted with them.
Right.
It's not fair on the children. Like, my children play on the front on the street and out the back with an axe, chopping kindling for me because they've been given these boundaries. And it's not about how great I am or how great the kids are. It's just about we've done the work. We've sat down with the children when we would have preferred to be sitting on the couch, my wife and I, just debriefing after a big day of work, where the boys go, Dad, we want to go back and cut some kindling. All right, darling, I'll be back in 40 minutes, because the boys, they're ready to learn. This is school, this is life, and that's an investment in their future, and we don't have the right to say no to them.
That's a really good point. So before, when we were trying to figure out our scheduling, you had said that the boys go to their homeschool group. What's that set up like? I'm curious about that.
So because we haven't started we haven't enrolled in formal schooling yet, we haven't hit that age. But we also, my wife and I both work. My wife is on the roster in the cafe a couple of days a week at the moment. And I don't have a roster, but I float around all the shops and I'm quite busy. It does suit us a couple of days a week to farm the kids out, to have other people mind them for us. We used to be with Otto when he was younger. He was in a daycare a day a week, and the daycare was fine, but we basically wrapped that system up and thought that's not quite for us anymore. So now I've got a few mates of mine are actually trained teachers, ironically, that no longer want to teach because they're, for a range of reasons, but one of them being they're just uninspired by the system. And they've got young children the same age, and this is about building your community. We're not preppers, we're not isolationists, we're not doomsdayers. Like, we're community focused. We want friends and companions through our lives that we can lean on, and they can lean on us. So once a week, my eldest goes to we call it the homeschool group, but it's basically like a play group where my friend, sometimes it's just his son and mine, sometimes there's 4 or 5 kids, and they're in the backyard and they go out and they help him weed the veggies. Last week, they stole a heap of vegetables out of the market garden and set up a stall on the front street and went door knocking and sold $60 worth of vegetables before my friend realized what they were doing. Like, how cool is that? You got a 5 and a
That's amazing.
5 and a 3-year-old starting their own little business. But they go down to the river and they go swimming and they get hands-on and do fun stuff. And it's just about, visceral engagement, getting these kids hands-on with things. And that'll formalize a little bit, because part of what we want to do for homeschooling is I guess, sublet most of the reading, writing, arithmetic to tutors. So we'll be engaging our friends in our community, going, look, just where Otto is at the moment, and our friend, Ant or whoever, could we pay you for 2 1-hour sessions a week where you can sit down and help Otto with his reading and writing, whichever level he's up to. And Jake, I'm going to sit down for one of those classes so I can sort of understand the rhythm, understand the literature, and help him a bit when he's at home. But I'm really, and this is very unpopular to say, I am really not fussed at all about Otto falling or Theo falling behind in reading, writing, arithmetic, because we've got a loose homeschooling system. I do not believe for a second that it takes 10 years of a child sitting down half an hour a day learning reading every day for the next 10 years of their life. It's just a nonsense. And once you
then still suck at it.
That's right. Like I left school, and when I started emailing supplies, working for my dad's record company, I didn't realize how poor my English and grammar was, and I was absolutely mortified. So I had to upskill myself, using spell check and the internet to do things. And I'm okay now, but I'm still not where I necessarily would have liked to have been. And I went through the system. But if you read literature, like you've got Paul Gatto out there, very famous advocate for homeschooling, but worked in the state-based schooling system. He talks about the fact that when he talks specifically about boys in this paragraph, when your son is ready to learn reading and writing and actually motivated and interested, it takes about 20 hours of tutelage to get them to the point that they can then self-progress and self-educate with the tools that they've been taught. That's a couple of weeks. No, that's easy. And we've already found, like, Otto's 5, and for the last year and a half, he's been able to write his first name. He can write his surname. He can write the word farm. And we've never sat down and said, time to learn to read. But he sees it on here. What does that say? That says Wolki Farm. And Wolki's our name, Dad, yes. So, and then he copies it down. And as he copies it, we say the letters. And it's not about formal learning. There's going to be a time for that, because you've still got to hit benchmarks that the states hit for you. Otherwise, you're going to force your children into state-based schooling. But I really believe the kids are going to learn a lot of lessons, climbing trees, collecting eggs, playing with their friends, going swimming, doing kid things. And just a couple hours a day, sit down, let's do some formal learning, lean on community, bring in the experts, and have a smaller mixed age gathering where each child can sort of get the more nuanced attention they need. Because I'm not attacking teachers. It's not the teachers. Imagine having a classroom. The classrooms in Albury are so busy because everyone left the cities and came to regional areas during lockdowns the last couple of years. Some of our classrooms have 40 children in them, 40 kids the same age.
Yeah.
What are you meant to do with that as a teacher? Like, I know when we have friends' kids over and there's 5 or 6 kids in the backyard, there's a bit going on, right, to manage that. Imagine having 40 and then trying to pump all this information. Like, it's the whole system is challenging for everyone involved as far as I'm concerned. And we're just trying to forge our own path through that the best we can.
I love that. That's fantastic. So I got a comment from Twitter when I published this, like, hey, I'm going to be interviewing you. Chepa wants to know, or he says, enjoy seeing the kids helping out on the farm. Did Jake also grow up on a farm? What memories can he share? So you guys had your hobby farm. What kind of memories did you have growing up on that hobby farm?
Yeah, sure. I didn't really grow up on a farm because I think I was about 14 when Mum and Dad purchased that property. So, and they've had it, a bit under 20 years. And I only lived there a couple of years. So most of the things, I used to have a Toyota Corolla that I used to put my motorbike helmet on, and I'd go out there and I'd paddock bash it through the creeks and do donuts and handbrakies in the morning dew. Dad always wanted me to go and do handbrakies in the morning so I wouldn't rip up all his grass. I'd just slide on the wet grass. And I was always getting in trouble for destroying the pastures and getting bogged. And then one day I was doing jumps in the car and I nosedived the ground pretty hard and buckled the radiator and broke the diff and just like smashed the thing. So that all stopped. So then we started motorbike riding. I remember I used to steal the wheelie bins from the house and we used to have this track through one of the creek gullies and we'd lay wheelie bins on the ground and then we put people between them, and we'd come out of the creek.
Oh
and jump
my
over
gosh!
the wheelie bins and the people. I buggered one of my ankles doing that, and yeah, we just did a lot of reckless stuff like that, but no real farming memories. I spent a lot of time with my paternal grandparents, my dad's parents growing up. They used to pick me up from school most days of the week because mum and dad were always at work. My grandma went through her journal. She keeps a daily journal when I was about 15, and added up that I'd spend about half my life with them. I used to sleep over there all the time. And I spent a lot of time there. So I was basically co-reared by my grandparents, which I loved. They had a 5-acre block pretty close to town, only about a 5-minute drive from the main street of Albury. My town's about 80,000 people now, obviously a bit smaller back then. And, same thing. They used to let me go outside with a shovel and a machete and a lighter. And I just used to think I was Rambo off in the bush fighting trees and lighting fires and surviving till it was 7 p.m. and a little bit dark. And that for me was so liberating because it was unsupervised. It was perceived unsupervised play, and I felt responsible, and I felt like I had autonomy. In hindsight, grandma and grandpa were always sitting on the porch reading a book, watching. But it's that I really believe that there's a lot of value in letting your children think that they're not being supervised and having that autonomy, which is what we're trying to emulate. So I just had a lot of chopping trees down and lighting fires and stirring up ants' nests and just general scallywag behavior.
Scallywag.
But never chores. I was never made to do, like I make my boys do chores. I was never made to do chores. My grandma, this is hilarious. I've never spoken about this before because no one's ever sort of segued into it. But my grandma, who's the most beautiful woman, I call her BB because her name's Beverly. And when I was little, everyone used to call her Beverly. So I tried to copy her and I said, BB. And ironically, my grandfather, they told me to call him Papa. And I said, Baba. So now they've got 7 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren, and everyone in the family and most people around town call them BB and Bubba. And these were identities that they got given to them by me when they were in their 60s. So it's very, very funny how your identity can shift when you're in your 60s, your name and everything around that. But my grandma BB used to give me a brass bell, ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, and she used to sit me in front of the TV. She'd wake up 6:30 in the morning every morning and record a TV program called Cheese TV, which in Australia here was very popular, and that would have Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z and Yu-Gi-Oh and all this stuff. And she used to sit up and record it and cut out the ads for me. She'd sit through an hour of this on the VHS recorder, and she'd cut out the ads. And then when they picked me up from school, she'd make me strip my uniform off and get straight into comfortable clothes. She'd put me on the couch. She'd put an ottoman under my feet. She'd make me sit back, and she'd bring me packets of chips. Poor diet. I had a poor diet, and my grandma fed this, but she'd make me bacon and egg sandwiches and bring me chips and lollies and Milos. And what I'm getting to, and I don't even know why I'm telling this story because it's revolting, really, how beautiful it was. But she would give me this brass bell, and when I finished with the packet of chips, I was forbidden from getting up and putting it in the bin. I had to throw it on the ground, literally throw the rubbish on the ground and ring the bell. God. And she'd come running and she'd pick it up, and it just became this really hilarious, fun game. And we just had the most beautiful relationship for years. And that heart of service, because really she got a heart of service and she wants to serve people. Such a beautiful thing. And she's so highly esteemed in the family. And now that they're sort of hitting senescence in their life, the family's trying to rally around and go, how can we? So we call in every week and, do you need anything? Help pay the bills. They're in their 80s now. And it's beautiful watching that arc. It's sad on some level seeing the elderly people in the family that have raised you on that arc. But on the other end, it's beautiful. And when the family can come together, there's a lot of dignity and grace in that. And so I don't really know the point of that story, but it felt worthwhile.
No, I love that. That was a really cute story. And man, sounds like your grandma just loved you, just loved to spoil you. Just a little service bell. That's really funny.
And I don't really necessarily think it was healthy, like the way I used to have this cupboard.
Grandmas usually aren't healthy with their kids.
Well, and that's the thing. Like I used to have this cupboard that I'd open, and every time I opened it, there was new toys in there. And I think about all the food she gave us, and all the adoration, and all the stuff she used to let us get away with, and all the toys it's a bit over the top, but it it does sort of speak to the fact that it takes a village to raise a child, and my parents were very strict and quite demanding of my behavior in public and all those sorts of things, which is fine. And then when I went to my grandparents, I was pretty well behaved because I had this home base thing, but I was allowed to blow off some steam and be adored and be a bit of a scallywag and experience different things. And so like our sons go to my parents every Thursday night and stay Thursday night. And I take my wife out on date night. We pick a restaurant, we go out, put the phones away and chit chat, debrief on the week, talk about the next couple of weeks, compare calendars to make sure that they're in sync so we can do what we need to do. And my parents are gorgeous with my boys, and we're so thankful that we've got family that can look after them like that for us. But they don't treat the boys the way that we would necessarily, they definitely don't handle them the way we would handle them at home. And they don't always treat them the way that we like, because sometimes they feed them foods that we would rather our boys not eat. But we keep telling ourselves, my wife and I, they're at the grandparents' house. There's freedom there. There's autonomy there. They're going to get spoiled. That's a glimpse into other things in the world. It's not about everything being a contraband and everything being illegal. Let them experience it and have fun. They're in a safe place. Our parents have great values, and it's so powerful. And that's community. If you don't have grandparents and you don't have parents, you really need to put yourself out there, I think, and find these people, because they're out there. You can find really good peers and really good friends that'll look after your kids here and there for you and build some community. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat.
That is very, very true. Oh man, I think that's a beautiful place to wrap up on. You got stuff to do. I've got a family to eat dinner with, but man, I just loved this conversation. This is maybe my new favorite. So it's very close. I got a top 5 going up in here. I'm not publishing it, but hey,
I love it.
Can you tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, well, if you're in Australia, I'd love you to head to wolkifarm.com.au and you can find out more about our business, and you can purchase goods off there. And if we don't ship to your postcode, just send me an email and we'll work that out. I'm on Twitter at Jake Wolki. We're on Facebook, Instagram, but I'm definitely most active on Twitter at the moment, enjoying triggering all the people out there and getting some honest conversation going.
Awesome. I'll have links for all that in the show notes. I really appreciate it, Jake. Good to meet you.
Appreciate you having me and giving me the platform and the time to have a chat. It's been lots of fun. Nice to meet you, Matt.
Yes, good to meet you. And for everyone listening, farmhoplife.com is where you can find all our stuff. See you later.
Inside of the city, the people are crazy, out of their minds, they ain't got a clue. We gone away, headed west for Montana, left family and friends, all I got now is you. We both got new jobs, a house and a homestead, thinking this was the life, all that there'd be. After our firstborn, you had to stay home. That's when the work got in the way for me. Well, I started Farm Hop Life. We'll come to your farm to help and to wander. Me and the family, a truck and an RV. Send us a message and there